When I did my last video, I said that this time I might mention some of the things that led up to my diagnosis of MS. There are quite a few other instances of, I guess you would say, medical gaslighting. So I've got them written down. And the reason it's written down is because I was approached by a journalist for the ABC here in Australia, who saw some of my Instagram posts. She was writing an article on medical gaslighting of women and wanted my input for some of the information. So I'm going to have to read some of this out. So unfortunately, I'll be looking down. Here goes. It's long, so I'll warn you now. If you don't want to listen, you best stop now. First instance that we think may have been MS was in March 1984. It was a Saturday morning. I went to get out of bed, and with no warning at all, my legs just stopped working. We called a doctor to the house, and he did a few tests, but he didn't know what was wrong. He basically said, I don't know what it is. Come see me in a week if it's not better. What do you say to that? I don't know. Anyway, a week passed. My legs were just getting back to normal. So, being young and naive, I guess, and living in a very small country town, we didn't take it any further. Over the next few years, a variety of symptoms like balance issues, problems with walking, mainly veering to the left and walking into the wall, that sort of thing. I mentioned it to my GP at the time. He was totally uninterested and brushed it off. The same GP also said that the excruciating pain I had with my menstrual cycle was just something women had to put up with, and that it couldn't possibly be as bad as I was making out. And I thought, oh, maybe he's right. Maybe I'm a hypochondriac. In 1991, we're up to now. I collapsed one evening, was taken to the local hospital. Now, it was a very small hospital because it was a very small town. And the on-call doctor at the time was the same GP. I had trouble speaking. My body was spasming, but I was awake. I could understand what he was saying. And what he concluded was there was nothing wrong and I was just attention seeking, and sent me home. The following week I went to see him and said, I want a referral to a neurologist. I had a feeling there was something not quite right there, but I had no idea what it might be. He didn't want to refer me, but I insisted. And He wrote out a referral letter in the end, sealed it up in an envelope, and I made an appointment with a neurologist who was a 3-hour drive away. Before I went there, I opened the referral and found that he'd written in there that there was nothing wrong and that I was just attention seeking. Wonderful. The neurologist that I saw, however, took it seriously, which was good. He ordered some tests, but this was before my state had any such thing as an MRI machine. So while he knew there was something wrong, there weren't the tests available to diagnose it. So after about half a dozen appointments with him, at roughly a 3-hour drive each way, so half the time I had to stay overnight, I just gave it up as a bad joke and didn't stop going. 1992, my husband and I moved to a bigger town, and I started seeing another doctor, a female doctor, and thought, oh, this is good. She'll listen. No. Small things, yes. Neurological things, or what I thought were neurological things, again, she brushed them off. I mentioned things like fatigue, balance problems, etc., etc., but she looked at them as individual problems rather than putting it all together and looking at them as symptoms of the one problem. She also, unfortunately, dismissed my concerns about my monthly cycle of heavy bleeding and excruciating pain. Early 1994, we're up to now, roughly 10 p.m. at night, out of nowhere, excruciating pain at the base of my spine. So, all around my lower back. Half an hour or so, I was in tears. The pain was so intense. We rang an out-of-hours doctor who said that if I could get to the doctor's surgery, he would see me. So we did that, and he thought it might have been a slip disc. So he gave me painkillers and sent me home. I later found out that it was most likely a large endometrial cyst that had burst, which is why the pain was so excruciating. About that same time, I started to develop a bit of a cough. You normally write off a cough, oh, it's cold, it'll be gone in a week. Oh, it'll be gone in 2 weeks. Or it'll be gone in a month. 6 months later, it wasn't gone. No amount of antibiotics or medications, medicines made any difference to it. So my doctor finally sent me for a gastroscopy, and they found that I had ulcerative esophagitis, which would never have improved with the medication she was giving me. So after getting the correct medication, within 2 or 3 weeks, the cough was clearing up and then went. About May of that same year, 94, my doctor was away on holidays, so I went to a locum doctor who was about 70-ish. Told him about the problems I was having with my menstrual cycle. He immediately referred me to a gynecologist. And after speaking with him, I decided that I couldn't handle the pain any longer. I wanted a hysterectomy. He didn't believe that what I was telling him about my cycle was the truth. I had a regular 28-day cycle, but 20 days of it was bleeding, and then 8 or 9 days off. He did the hysterectomy, and afterwards he said he needed to apologise because he hadn't believed what I was saying was true, but it was the worst case of endometriosis he'd ever seen in 30 years of surgery. The whole pelvic cavity was filled with, in his words, a toffee-like substance because so many cysts had grown and burst. So grown and burst. There was the remains of cysts all throughout the intestines, behind the spine, gluing the ovaries to the bladder, so we had to do a lot of repair work. And all that could have been avoided if the doctors earlier, 10 years earlier, had listened to what I was saying. But by the time I had the hysterectomy, there was so much damage done that I would never have been able to have children anyway. So over the next 10 years or so, lots of other symptoms of MS were happening. And apart from that, in about 2003, October-ish, I had a day off from work and was just at home doing some dusting and a bit pottering around when I found myself short of breath. Never happened before. Within 5 minutes, I was finding it hard to breathe and ended up on the floor. So I rang the hospital, told them what was happening, and then drove myself there because we lived so close. It was quicker to drive myself there than to wait for an ambulance. When I got there, I saw a doctor who, when I got there, my breathing was a bit better. They put me on oxygen for a while. When I got to saw a doctor, his words were, and I'm going to quote him, "Women of a certain age tend to exaggerate things a bit. I think you should make an appointment and see a therapist." What? So, after him saying that for a while and insisting that's what was happening, I just walked out of the hospital and drove home. Went to see my doctor,